good morning, or if you're on that side of the world. Good evening if you're on this side of the world. It's Monday. I'm Mover, and I've got a very special guest. He is the author of Icarus 2.0, parachute included, but he's also flown the OV-10, the A-10, the F-16. He's an Airbus captain, and he's an all-around fine American. And he introduced me to Krav Maga, which is probably the best part of everything. Please welcome to the stream, Stinky.
Hey,
What's
Oos
up?
Mover. How are you,
Oos,
man?
what's
Good to
up?
see you.
How are you?
Great.
It's very nice to see you. Let me get the chat up real quick, make sure. Okay, everybody's there. Everybody can hear me. So, welcome. I appreciate you joining us. Real quick about your book. The links are in the description. And your book is about, tell me about it. What did we write about?
What did I write about? Okay, so what I've done is COVID, watching my kid behind a computer screen and Zoom calls, and I've launched, as you know, I have 4 kids, Mover. I've launched 3 of them to college now, and I've dealt with a lot of kids coming in and out of the house with that are interested in, hey, tell me about the Air Force, tell me about the Marines, tell me about how do I get to college, or I'm not going to get to college, or I heard a lot of stinky thinking, I heard a lot of good thinking, I heard a lot of good advice, I heard a lot of stuff that I'm like, well, what's the guidance council telling me? And essentially, this iteration over the course of about 6 years now of launching kids, I was just like, I had noticed when I was an admissions liaison officer back in the early 2000s that the guidance seemed to be just as limited as it was when I was asking these questions. And I'm kind of going, hey, what is going on here? And that, a little thing called 9/11 kind of got in the way of me trying to address some things about that. And then, of course, raising my own kids. And then here we come circling back. But one of the statistics that I had jotted down, was the fact that there's 277, this is like 2007, there's 277 students for every one guidance counselor.
Oh,
and
wow.
And so I got into COVID, and I'm watching kids on Zoom, and I'm like, this is terrible. This is not, nobody wishes this upon their kids, to be sitting behind a computer screen, right? You want them out there playing, interacting, socializing. And of course, the guidance council, they're all gone now. So now all these kids are going to get nothing. They don't have anybody to talk to. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to start a website, and start answering questions on the website. And that kind of I started blogging and just answering kids' questions about, hey, man, I feel this way or that way, or I don't know about how to get this scholarship. Can you help me with the SAT, ACT? And then I just was inspired to start writing. And what I did is I just framed some advice about, because I was one of these kids, I was one of these kids that didn't know how to get from A to B and was kind of lost. And so essentially what I wound up doing was going, let me try and, go back and, put lessons learned here. Mm-hmm. And I framed it around when I had my accident, which we'll talk about probably. I jotted down.
That's interesting. I mean, that is the hook. Right? You tell that story in chapter 1, page 1, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. But man, that is
we'll talk about it.
It's an ejection story for those wanting to know. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and so that story, you're familiar with that event because you were in training during that event and you were getting ready to come to our squadron. But when that event happened, we were deploying, we were Iraq, we were getting ready, we had Afghanistan going on. I'm like, well, I'm going to jot something down for my kids in case, I'm not so lucky next time, And I did, and I wrote it down and I put it and I shelved it, but it was there, hey, honey, put it in the box and make sure the kids read this if something happens. And so I pulled that out and I said, I'm going to write a frame around this story, these lessons learned, and put it out there and see if it helps anybody. And that's it. And that's how it manifested.
And you've done it not just with that story. You've told other stories throughout your career in this book. So there's a lot of personal, like, here's how I did it kind of stuff. So, and that's the tone of this channel. So that's awesome. I support it. And if you want to check it out, it's available December 2nd we were talking, and
Yeah, it's in the pre-order. It's on Amazon. It's
yep,
on Barnes. It's, right now, it's out for EPUB. I mean, if you're a Kindle or a Nook or anything like
yep,
that, it's all out there. But print
okay,
on demand is available through BookBaby, I think now, but through Amazon is December 2nd, I believe. This is my first
yeah.
book mover. I'm not really familiar with this whole
Yeah, no, it's a
process.
process, man. But
Yeah.
the link is in the description, so if anybody's
Okay.
interested, they can check that out there. So,
Yeah.
on to the interview. I wanted to talk about that because that sets the stage for your entire career. I mean, everything you've done has led up to this point, which is awesome. But how'd you get into aviation? Like, what was the, did you always want to be a pilot, or was it something that you kind of walked into and realized it was your passion later on?
It was my father was an airline pilot. Okay, so
Mhm.
I had some exposure there, right? But he was always gone. Okay, so that was one of the things that I was like, I don't know if
Yeah.
that's what I want to do. But when we were kids, we used to watch, Pappy Boynton, Midway. We'd watch those shows, and I'm like, man, that looks cool. These fighter pilots, Tuskegee Airmen protecting the bombers. Europe. You see the
Yeah.
Battle of Britain stuff. I mean, I loved that that part of. I was born way too late, right?
Yeah, we all say
So
that.
we
Everybody,
all say
we
that, right?
always say
I
that.
mean,
Yeah.
flying a Spitfire over the Battle of Britain or P-51, come on, that would have been fantastic. But at
Yeah.
any rate, that inspired me. But I didn't know anything. I just thought it was cool. But I thought that was something you could only do in wartime.
Right.
And then essentially what happened is my dad took me to an air show, and I grew up in Miami. My brother and I grew up in Miami, and Homestead's down there, Homestead. And back then they had B-52s and F-4s, and I'd see these guys streaking out, taking off. And
Yeah.
I'm like, man, they're just taking off. And I said, that looks pretty cool. And I didn't really know how to do that. There's nobody in my family was military. So, and then we were in that stage of the 80s, the 80s growing up where it's all about, everyone was talking about how you're going to earn a living. You got to go to college, you got to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So I started going, okay, well, I don't want to do what my dad does because he's gone all the time with this because he was in New York. And I didn't know how to do the fighter pilot thing at that time. So I was still a kid. So what I did is I went to my parents. We had some trouble there, as a little trouble as a teenager going through a divorce at home, and that created some problems, and some of this with my dad a little bit, and then I went out and lived with my aunt and uncle in California, and he's a doctor, and that's where I discovered I don't want to be a doctor.
Well, that's one way to figure it out. Yeah.
Because I went and lived with him, and he took me into some surgeries, and I was not good with that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I
No.
quickly discovered that this is
Yeah.
no. I mean, it's good in the movies. It's not good in real life. That kind of thing. So he had a kid while I was out there, and then one day I was babysitting my cousin, essentially, and a commercial came on. And I grew up in Miami. I sail in boats, spearfishing. I had a little bit of exposure with my dad flying, and he soloed me. I said, Dad, let me just check out this flying thing. And he sold me when I was 15, totally illegally.
Yeah.
But yeah, he just took me out and spent 3 days and sold me.
Allegedly. FAA allegedly. Yeah. Allegedly.
It was allegedly. Yeah, exactly. And it all kind of came together in this commercial. It was a Navy commercial. It was an aircraft carrier plowing through the water, beautiful, pristine turquoise, blue ocean, plowing through the water, and an F-14 Tomcat hitting the 3-wire.
Yeah.
And catching the 3-wire. And I'm just like, and I see boats flying, fighter planes, travel the world, and I went, and a Fly Navy banner came across. That's all it was, big and yellow, and it goes, Fly Navy. And I'm like, oh. So I started pursuing,
that's
I'm like,
awesome.
I want to go do that, and that's how it started. And I just started asking questions, and you get a flavor for that in my book. You've read some of it.
Yeah.
where I talk about back then how I sort of went through this Buddha loop process. B
The
was not
Buddha
a
loop.
factor because
Yeah.
we weren't distracted back then with smartphones and technology. So whatever moment you were in was the moment. There were no
Right.
distractions. You know what I mean? It was like the TV commercial had all my attention. You know what I mean? It wasn't like being Snapchat, Instagram, blah blah blah, that's going on. So I could focus on that, and that's took me into the observe, to the orient, to the decide, to the act, constantly asking people, how do I go do that? And eventually it led to me getting an appointment to the preparatory school at the Air Force Academy. And that was the rest was history. I went to the Air Force Academy and graduated, and then it started the journey.
The
It
Navy
started from there.
recruited you for the Air Force Academy. That is the best. That's the best story
Well,
ever.
that's the funniest thing. You're going to love this. So I went to the Naval Academy interview for the Naval Academy interview. Don't even know about the Air Force Academy. And when I finished the congressional nomination process, I get a letter that says, "You've been nominated to the Air Force Academy." And I go, where's that? I said, I don't even know where that is. And this is December of my senior year.
Mm-hmm.
December, it's like, I wanted to go to the Naval. Is this a mystery? No. That's all the Naval slots are gone. And I said, okay, so where's that? It's in Colorado Springs.
That's awesome.
And so I immediately got busy with that, and I talked to an ALO, an admissions guy, and April 15th of 1984, they gave me a shot.
That's awesome.
It was crazy. It was crazy.
You and your brother both went to the Air Force Academy, right? That became
right.
You guys went together.
My brother was 3 years behind me, and
okay.
He followed me to the Air Force Academy as well. Through the same thing. We call it the dumb jock way, the prep school, and then on to the
Wow.
That way.
So from the Air Force Academy, you got your pilot slot.
Correct.
Was that a difficult process?
Yeah, it was kind of a struggle for me. I mean, 5 years now at the academy, right? So, and I went to Euranato Joint Jet pilot training. So I did well enough at the academy to get it, one of those slots. I think there's 80 slots that were given to 300 applicants, something like that. I don't know, it goes so a long way up, but I was a soaring instructor at the Air Force Academy, and I did well academically in sports enough. I went for it. I wanted to go to Euranato because apparently that's where you go if you want to be a fighter pilot. Everyone said, go to Euranato back then if you want to be a fighter pilot. So I was just deadlocked as a cadet. I'm going to Euranato, I'm going to Euranato. So I managed to get to Euranato. Euranato was tough for me. 5 years at the academy of grinding, and it's like, oh, thank God, man, I'm finally here. And even though the training was a grind, it was very stressful at times, and it's 10 check rides. Back then it was 10 check rides. The normal program was 6 check rides because you had to do, we had to do low level in each stage and formation in each stage. And I think that's the difference between this is the old pilot training, pilot training, Euranato added on low levels and formation training, I think. But my difficulty, in the first stage for me was instruments. I had a tough time with the toilet papers this way, reach for the toilet paper and you're sitting, you know what I mean? That I had a tough time in instruments, and but I got through it. Low level was really good. I did very well on low levels for both.
And it translated later in your career. That's good. Yeah.
Correct. So exactly. So low level is kind of where they steered me, but and formation in the T-38 was a little difficult for me too, during the pilot training stage, because I had trouble staying. Back then, we didn't have these fancy MFDs. We had to do everything based on radials to stay in your airspace. And getting a four-ship to move and stay inside the airspace with that little thing, it was a constant. That was a tough thing for me. Those were my 2 struggles in pilot training. Yeah, wow. Instruments and then formation. Yeah.
No issues getting set. You were a soaring instructor, so no motion sickness or anything like that.
No, none of that.
Mm-mm. Awesome. So how did the rack and stack? I mean, what was your first choice, and what did you end up like? How did you end up moving on from pilot training? I
wanted to fly the F4. I was one of these guys that wanted to fly all the the legacy stuff. Yeah. So I put an F4 in first. I put in F-16, A-10, and then F-15. I went down that way. The F4, we only had one wild. We got one wild weasel slot. That was it. And then that was back when we also had the EF-111 as well.
Okay.
And then, so we didn't have a very big class. There was only about 11 of us, and we only had in the class one F-15, three F-16s, two A-10s, an EF-111, and three FAPEs. So, and we lost an A-10, which is what I got originally, and we wound up getting two OV-10 slots out of it. So I went to the OV-10 initially, and back then we had, the way the program worked, it was, I don't know if you remember this or you ever talked to anybody, but you had the Alpha Tour, you had your weapons tour, and then you had a teaching. You were supposed to do those three. You had to do one of those three. You had to kind of do your time in the barrel. It was one of those things. So you could become a first assignment forward air controller coming out of pilot training back then. And then what you do is you go on to a weapon system after that, a fighter weapon system after that, or you go on to teach. There was that track of rotating Alpha Tours. So I started out as a forward air controller in the OV-10. What a blast. 24 lieutenants, one major, one lieutenant colonel. I mean, fighter pilot songs every Friday night, and just a hoot. And again, your Raven FAC and a Misty FAC, and your instructors are a whole bunch of ex-Vietnam guys.
That's awesome.
They were incredible, man. I mean, the stories, these guys, unbelievable. I mean, the stories were just amazing, and they're just phenomenal instructors with all kinds of experience. They flew the F4s in Nam. They flew the Sky Raiders, and OV-10 came later, but I mean, they had all kinds of experience that they taught us, clock, map, ground, how to talk to the Army. We had all radios in the OV-10, every radio. I mean, you could talk to a trucker going down the highway in the OV-10. You could do a breaker 19 for the beacons going southbound on 95.
That's awesome.
You could easily. We had HF. We had everything. We could talk to the Army. And then you could dump 5 special forces out the back as well. So it's a pretty cool airplane, to do what it did. Yeah.
Wow. Now they're using it for firefighting. It's a firefighting aircraft, right?
The firefighter, right? I mean, you remember back then we didn't have GPS. We didn't have all that stuff. It was INS came later. Everything was done. In order to mark targets, it was off the map, the coordinates or UTM grids. You were gridding it, and then you were going plot it from 1 to 250 to 1 to 50 in inches. And you got to find the target and talk to the Army guys, and then you got to shoot smoke. We were firing rockets back then and trying to bracket targets.
Willie Pete rocket. Yeah. Did it carry any other ordnance, or was it just?
Yeah, we carried. No, we could carry the bombs. We carried 250 pounders, and then we didn't really do that much. Mostly rockets we just carried rocket pods, and it had 7.62. Awesome. Machine gun on the sponsons, but never used them. They just took them out. Yeah, because
that's single pilot.
No, it was tandem, but you only flew it single pilot. Typically, yeah. Mm-hmm. Wow. It was tandem just typically for instructors, because it was all built as an observer, to try and manage close air support. So the more the merrier. But they put it down to one guy doing it. Mostly the back seat was empty.
Did you enjoy it? I mean, was that a fun
I loved
tour
it.
for you? Yeah.
It was a great tour. Yeah, great tour out of Shaw. Had a blast. Great squadron. Great camaraderie, esprit de corps. A lot of the stuff. This is before the wall. I mean, the wall had just come down, in '89. And so this is the '90s when the Air Force still had golf courses, still had oak clubs, still had all that.
It was still
all
cool.
that.
Yeah.
It was still a lot of fun, man. It was just a lot of fun. I mean, it was, and then you're a bunch of lieutenants. I mean.
Yeah. They can't get any better than that.
It doesn't any better than that, because it was what we call the FAFAC. It was a first assignment forward air control. So they just collected all these lieutenants, and you had 2 majors and a lieutenant colonel in charge of the place, and it was a hoot, just a total hoot.
That's awesome. And so you did 2 years there before you moved on?
I did about a year and a half, and then they got rid of the OVs. They sent them down to Colombia and to try and fight the drug war. And they moved us into the A-10. They started transitioning us into the A-10. So I went back to A-10 school. That was when we did both. They were doing the observation mission and the attack mission.
Yeah.
And we were getting trained for both, but we were already observers, so that we just trained us on the attack side for the A-10 part. And then from there, I went to the 25th Fighter Squadron out in Korea and spent a year out there after my Shaw tour with the 25th, or is it 25th, 21st Fighter Squadron, and then out to the 25th in Korea, which was a total hoot as well. Yeah.
Well, so tell me about your first flight in the A-10. What'd you think of that?
That was cool. I mean, solo, and you're just being chased. Yeah. That was cool. I was at Davis Monthan, and I'll never forget that. You know, you're just like, okay, you know, it's not a 1G little trainer anymore. You're going for it here. That's awesome. And it was cool. And Arizona is a great place to fly the Hog, you know, in terms of, you know, doing low altitude tactical navigation, and those ranges out there are just sick. You know, you've been out to those ranges, I'm sure, out in Gila Band, and great ranges. Yeah, I loved it. I loved the A-10.
Did your time prior help you? I mean, was it pretty easy because you were so good at already clock to map to ground and canopy code and all that stuff?
Absolutely, canopy codes, clock to map to ground. The OV-10 set us up for total success in the A-10. As a matter of fact, I managed to pull off Top Gun in A-10 school. And I owe that to not skill, but just to these crusty old Vietnam guys, you know, teaching us how to fly this thing and how to do it. You know, it was just how to crank mills, how to do it, and how to get busy on downwind and crosswind and crank mills and dial it all in. They had you pacing so well.
Yeah.
And you got this pacing down so well to try and get an accurate rocket shot or an accurate bomb drop. But, you know, that was back when to hit a target, we were ripping 6 sometimes. You know what I mean? That was kind of the thing. You know, ripple 3, ripple 6, or bracketing targets or dropping in pairs, you know, that kind of thing. So, you know, that was the old cranking mills. But as I started in the A-10, we were INS driven. So INS driven was even better, you know, because now you didn't have to. You still had to do some windage and compensation. You had to do those kinds of things, not nearly as much you had to do in the OB-10. I mean, the OB-10, you know, 0.76 Gs, get that rocket to come out with, you know, perfect.
Yeah.
So you don't tip it, you know, that kind of thing. But a little less gonculations going on as you're going down, you know, down the chute. But it was, those guys had us so well trained that we excelled. A lot of the OB-10 guys excelled in A-10 school for that reason, I think.
Was the A-10 a lot faster, or was it pretty? I mean, how much faster pacing wise was the A-10 than an OV-10?
I mean, for typical work that we were doing, maybe 100, 150 knots.
Oh, okay.
More.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well,
I mean, you're 200, you know, in the OV-10, you know, that's scorching. You never took the throttles out of mill, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing in the Hog, you know, but now you're instead of 175 to 200, you're at 250 to 300, you know, going around the pattern. You know, the lower you got, the higher, obviously, the speed. But that's it.
But you got to shoot the gun.
The gun.
Tell me about the gun.
The Hog gun is just a thing of pure beauty. I mean, that machine is just, as you know, built around that gun. Yeah. The whole darn thing shakes when you shoot the gun, and it is just a pure pleasure to shoot that thing. Going from that to the F-16 pea shooter.
Man, do
you
have around every guest I've had from the A-10? Like, I'm like, what's it like to shoot the gun? And they show me the giant 30 mic, and they're like, see, check this out. I'm like, God, F-16 guy, I don't know about it.
Yeah. I've got it. It's out now. It's outside, but I'm in my kids' room, not my room. So, yeah.
What was it like the first time, man? I mean, was it just an amazing, like, out of body experience?
Well, I mean, because you're not expecting it. You know what I mean? I've been shooting rockets all this time, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm getting ready to squeeze down on this thing, and when you do, and it just the smoke, you get the smoke, and the whole cockpit shakes, and then all the insulation starts bouncing around inside the cockpit, and you're like, holy crap, this thing
awesome.
is, and to see the rounds downrange. I mean, that thing from 2 to 4,000 feet is amazing. And I mean, and then when we got CCIP and GPS, 4 to 6,000 feet, it was pretty lethal too. I mean, it was just, I pity the fool, on the end of that thing.
I pity the fool.
Yeah, and my buddies, that were in Desert Storm, I mean, it was just, they just, 1,170 rounds of this. I mean, you guys, they don't have a chance. Yeah.
So you went to Korea?
Korea?
Was that the what was the call sign? The Raven?
Asim Dragons. Oh, we were Misty Facts out there.
Misty Facts. That's what it is.
Misty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. How'd you like? I mean, were you married at the time? Was it pretty much just single dude raging in Korea?
Single dude raging in Korea. Yoboseo, kamsahamnida, ammo bowl, baby. That was it.
Were you a FAC A?
I was a FAC A, and then, I did that the whole time. Yep.
Is that a pretty difficult transition upgrade? Because you're expecting the North Koreans at any time, right? So
it was. Our big thing back then was we fly the line, the demarcation line, and we worked with the Koreans quite a bit, but you had to know your stuff, in terms of where all the choke points were. So we were very familiar with the border, because you were going to be getting fast planes coming in. You're getting your F-18s from the coast. You're getting your F-16s from down south. You're getting your Korean F-16s. You had to cross the language barrier. You had to do all that kind of stuff. And you had to get the iron on target. You had to hold people and then just bring them in and get, that was, the whole thing was about getting bombs on target as fast as possible, because it's not a very big line. It's not a long border, so, and when we're practicing, the other part of that is the keeping people from crossing that line. You know what I mean? That's a bad thing. So, and the weather up there is not so great either. So it was a challenge. But it was an excellent experience. The whole year.
Artillery, right? Artillery both sides.
Artillery was
your lines. Yeah.
Arty lines, and that was the main thing, was the Arty and the small arms were a big problem out there. But they had SAMs. The SAMs were an issue too. A lot of indirect terrain masking, a lot of direct terrain masking, a lot of using the weather to your advantage. Yeah, a lot of offset casts. You know what I'm talking? Way in the back, and just making sure that you follow in behind. They're on the right heading, and I mean a lot of that kind of stuff where you're popping, a lot of pop to acquire type stuff.
Wow,
that was what we were doing back then.
That's a 1-year tour, right? That was just was that a full assignment?
No, it's a 1-year tour, and extendable if you wanted to after that, but you could extend up to 2. I went to Davis Monthan after that, operationally, in the A-10 at that point. Yeah.
Flying the A model still? Is this the?
We were C models at Davis Monthan by that time. Yep.
Oh, okay.
C model.
How'd you like that? How'd you like the transition?
It was same stuff. It was really the fact that they were calling it A-10. It was just mainly we were doing all the same things, but just not dropping as many bombs. Yeah. Shooting a lot of rockets, shooting a lot of guns. Poor man Maverick, FLIR, we had that kind of ability to so that we could tell them, it's hot on cold, dark on hot, light on hot. I mean, giving them contrast per target. But now we're actually, employing a lot of the weapons that we were carrying anyways, Yeah. So it was really just, now how do you manage a 4-ship doing surface attack tactics and counter an air threat and fight your way in and fight your way out if you have to. if you don't have air cover. I mean, there was a lot of that going on now, added into the mix of tactics. Yeah.
Did you do the Sandy upgrades and the Sandy
I
course?
did. I did the Sandy. I was a Sandy 2. And by the time I checked out as a Sandy 2, then it became an IP RTU.
Oh, okay.
Or FTU is what they call it now. Back then we called it RTU. I became an FTU instructor. So fighter transition unit, A-10 guy. And so I was teaching in Davis Mountain now. So the Sandy mission, operationally, I wasn't doing that, the CSAR anymore. So,
what was your favorite thing to do in the Hog?
I think CSAR was my favorite. I'll tell you the truth. A combat search and rescue was my favorite. I mean, because you just integrate so many different levels of tactics into that game plan. Everything comes into it. I mean, you're managing a 4-ship, you're managing C-130s, kilos, close air support, and you're protecting the guy on the ground, and you've got to manage your radios. I mean, you got your 1 mile ring, your 3 mile rings. You got you got all these things that we were doing that were just to keep that guy safe. I think it was just or gal safe, a challenging mission. It was really challenging, but it was fun from the level of it brings everything together. SAT, FAC-A, being, conserving fuel, energy management, weapons management, it all comes into play. And you're helping each other out, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Everybody's doing something. So
did you enjoy the teaching aspect of being an IP at the B course? I mean, was that something was it tougher because you're not in the aircraft with them, so you're kind of having to just kind of talk them on to everything they do?
Yeah, it's a little tough. I mean, I loved it. It was so rewarding to teach. Very rewarding to teach. That was one of my favorite things to do. As a matter of fact, to this day, SAT 12 is my favorite instruction mission because that was like the graduation, right? SAT 12 is graduation. You go out with 6 feet and Mark 82s and 300 rounds in the gun. And I would always tell my students the first 15 minutes are to graduate, and the next 15 minutes are pick whatever target you want. And we're going to make sure that it is no longer there by the time we leave.
That is
with the gun.
awesome.
So we would always pick something out and make sure it was on fire or disappeared before we left, and just so they would just get that, all right, I'm flying the Hog, man, and take that with them to their next station. So.
Was that your last tour in the A-10 at the DM?
I got to fly at the Connecticut Guard for a little while. I mean, for me, I came up on my active duty service commitment right around 98. And I've been to OSW twice. The wall came down. Now we're the world's policeman, that kind of thing. And I've been to Kuwait now, and it's 175 days. And then I'd come back in the Hog, come back and I'd get 2 weeks off with my wife. And then I'd go to JRTC, NTC. I mean, the Hogs were always in red flag. We were on the road for probably 220 days a year. I mean, it was like almost being in the Navy. I would imagine on a boat.
And the 90s were a tough time, right? I mean,
they
were a very tough time for the military.
Very tough time for the military. Very tough time. So we were constantly gone. And my daughter was born in 98. Erica was born in 98. And I thought, man, this I'm going to be doing this deploying thing to eternity. I don't know if this is, raising a family, this is the right thing right now for us. So I want to be around for my kids. So I was looking at the idea of maybe going to the Guard, or the reserves and getting some stability, instead of constantly gone. I did 2 tours in OSW in the Hog. And my next assignment was going to be to the Strike Eagle. My boss said, I got you lined up for a strike. And I said, boss, that's a smaller weapon system than the A-10, that's just a lot of deploying just right there. And I'm going, I don't think this is kind of the way I want to raise the family right now. So I just went to the Guard, and flew the Hog for about a year, and then, due to BRAC, and I was in Connecticut at the time, and then of course they were talking about losing the Hogs there, and then I got hired by United Airlines because I was a part timer, and I was based in San Francisco, so that's when I went to
cross country commute.
I wasn't going to do that commute, right?
Oh,
so that was a heck of a commute. No,
yeah.
Can't do it. So I decided, the heck with that, I'm going to go just do a ground job. And I started, that's where the ALO thing, and that's kind of how we get to the book. I was starting to work with high school students, getting them motivated to go into the Air Force and do things, working as an admission liaison officer in California. And working with kids, going to career days.
Oh, okay. So you did, so you just did points, no pay just to get your retirement. Yeah.
That's correct.
You took some time off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know about this. There's it's the Academy. Is that what it's called? Academy Liaison Program or officer?
Correct. Yeah. Admissions liaison officer. ALO is what they call them. Admissions liaison officer. Yeah. And it's a good deal. I mean, you're working with the kids. It's points, no pay, of course, but it's rewarding because you're going out there and you're just seeing yourself 20 years, or not 20, but maybe 15 years earlier, and this kid going, hey, how do I go fly these planes? And now you get to answer those questions. Or
what was your Finney flight like in the A-10?
Oh, it was awesome. My Finney flight was down at the McGuire Air Base, the big range down there, Warren Grove. I think I forget what it's called, but
Willow Grove.
It's somewhere down there. I can't remember now, but it's in New Jersey. There's a big range over there, and my last flight, I flew up the Hudson River with my wingman on the way back, and went past the Statue of Liberty up the Hudson, and
that's awesome.
And got to land at Bradley in Connecticut. I had a blast. It was great.
How old were you at this time? Like, how old were you doing the ALO thing?
I finished up my last flight in A-10, and I think it was April of 99, something like that. So I was, I was about 30 years old, I think. 33. Yeah, something like that. 33.
Did you feel like you were kind of leaving it behind? Like, hey, I've got stuff in the tank. This is tough.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I didn't want to stop. But when we had our second kid. Second kid by then. It was time to do the family thing. I knew I was.
You didn't stay in the ALO thing. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a lot more stories left. How did you just transition out of that?
Well, 9/11 was the big.
Okay.
That's the big difference right there. So I'm at California, at our house, and I'm doing this ALO thing, and 9/11 happens, and I'm like, the writing's on the wall, but I'm not missing this. I got to get back into a cockpit. So I started just hitting units all over the country. Fresno, I went to Baltimore, I went to Homestead, and I just started trying to look for a job flying again. Boise. I talked to Battle Creek. Everybody, the A-10s were full. I mean, they didn't have any openings at the time. Everyone was full, and it took about 2 years, but something opened up in my hometown here in Homestead. They had a training slot, and they had told me no about 2 or 3 times before, and a training slot opened up. And this is the persistence part for all the kids out there.
Yep.
Stay persistent. Keep trying, keep plugging. I visited them maybe 3 or 4 times, and constantly calling them and saying, hey, how's it looking? I'm still interested. No, sorry, Stinky. We don't have anything for you, Wow. And then one day I got a phone call from Homestead that said, hey, we have a training slot and nobody in line. You want to take it? And I gave my leave of absence to United that afternoon. I was on a plane that evening and flying down to Homestead. And a month later, I was doing 9Gs at Lemoore, wishing I had stayed in shape.
I immediately regret this decision. This is before ATAGs too. The kids don't understand. Back in our day, you had to actually G-strain.
Yeah, 15 seconds at 9Gs when you're mid 30s and you're going, I don't remember how to do this. I'm I was black and blue when I finished that product.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was crazy.
So you got through it though, and that's the
I got
important
through
thing.
it.
Is you got
Yeah.
through that. Where'd you go to F-16 school?
Luke
At Luke. Yeah.
Air Force Base.
How'd you like flying the Viper for the first time, having flown slow, except for the T-38, your whole career?
That was a rush. I mean, It was a rush. Flying that F-16 was a rush for sure. Now you got to remember. I mean, for all these kids that are out here, I mean, born with a computer in their hands. I was working with clocks and maps, and in the A-10 world. And now all of a sudden, I've been out for 4 years, and I'm back in F-16 school, and now they've got data transfer cartridges, and MFDs, and radar, and I'm going, and I'm trying to keep up, and the big thing for me was A-10s. Everything's visual because you don't want to you do not lose sight of your wingman because that's a bad thing,
right?
And now you're constantly having to cross-check a radar, and you're going much faster, and it's hard to break that habit of losing. You're going to have to lose track of your wingman for a minute, because you got to set up your radar or get your saddle situated. And that was a challenge for me, for sure, at school. For sure.
So then you moved your family down to Homestead, and the rest is
that's it. The rest is history. 2003. Yeah, and my brother was there.
Wow.
Yeah, my brother was flying F-16s there at the time too. Yeah.
Before you, he got there first.
He got there 2 months ahead of me, 3 months to 6 months ahead of me at the Makos. Yep.
Were they flying Block 30s? Was it the same jets in 2003, or were there different jets?
2003 Block 30s. Yep. We were still Big Mouth Block 30.
Big Mouth.
Yep.
God.
Yep.
That's even different from Luke.
I can't remember.
I mean, you're flying what, Block 25s? What we had at Luke, Block 42s.
Yeah.
Big Mouth GE, man. Whew.
Yeah. Pratt and Wimpy to the mighty GE. Yep. No.
Yeah. So tell me about Homestead. I mean, how was that? You were a part-timer now doing this mission. What were you doing for your civilian job, and how was it going back and forth?
That was definitely a lot of work. Trying to learn 2 airplanes, because I left United, and then by the time I finished school in the F-16, I was furloughed by United. So I went from the 737 at United to the A320. I got hired by my new airline here. So, whoops, I don't think I was supposed to. At any rate, so I'm flying for that airline. Yeah, that's fine. And I'm flying the Airbus now. So I'm learning the Airbus and kind of learning the F-16. And, I'm also now trying to, run a life support shop with 6 guys in it. And, it was a busy time with 3 kids practically in diapers. So it was, there was a lot going on back then, buddy.
Was that your first deployment? Like dropping bombs deployment when you went with the Makos for the first time?
2005, was Iraq 2005, yeah.
Wow.
And I missed 2007 because that was I was in captain school. I wanted to finish that up, and so I missed our deployment in 2007. And then you and I both went in 2009.
That's true. Iraq. You were one of my first flight leads. In that, but before that is when you had an incident.
Yep. Yes, I did.
That is actually included in this book, and it's a very good story. So please.
Sure.
The floor is yours.
So the 2007, I don't know if you guys remember this, there was a little bit of saber rattling going on with Taiwan, all right? And the whole idea of, are we going to protect them? We were talking about it at the time back then, and we had just finished doing an ORI and a lot of air-to-ground stuff. And as you know, Fighter Pilot 101, we always want to show up and have a desired learning objective with every mission that we go into. So we're always trying to get better, always. and no different than any fighter pilot out there or anybody that's trying to be good at their job. And we've done so much air to ground. Now we're starting to get back into air to air again, 06 and 07. And for me, I was just getting checked out as a 2-ship, and I was still learning to feeling pretty good about my skills, my air to air skills, in BFM and BVR. And I decided on this red air because that day it was a day mission turned to night mission. So I had a chance. I'm like, this is a great opportunity. You got Taiwan, you have the Strait. Where are we going to be possibly? If we have to fight, we're going to be over the water.
Yep.
So why don't I learn how to do these tactics? I'll practice in the day and I'll try and perfect it at night. Now, the maneuver that I was practicing is pretty aggressive. We can't talk about the specific maneuver, but I practiced it in the daytime and I made some mistakes per the book, our TTPs, 3-1. I didn't quite execute correctly.
Yep.
And I thought, okay, well, I'll clean it up tonight when we go out there tonight. So we know about the holes in Swiss cheese. We all talk about it as pilots. The Swiss cheese and lining up the holes. So essentially what had happened was that when we fight air to air, as you know, you typically fight same configurations. So I'm tanked up, blue air's tanked up,
right?
Red air's tanked up, we're same configuration. You don't fight them. We're not fighting like a clean jet versus a dirty jet. Well, on this particular night, the only 2 jets they had left were clean F-16s, no rails, no missiles.
Ooh.
Yeah, nothing.
Oh.
I didn't put that. I didn't have the experience, or my biggest pilot error was not saying to myself, Pete, this is a mean machine you got here, and you're not. This is going to hurt you. So, and you're not configured like you normally are. So your performance just went up like significantly.
Right.
So be careful in executing this maneuver. That didn't even register me. I mean, to me, it was like, okay, now I have the true jet that I could be engaging in. And I didn't line that thread up.
Yeah.
Okay. So we went out there. It was a beautiful night, over the water, about 7:20 at night. And we're over there in Key West and Whiskey, the 174, I think it was.
Yep.
And lead sends me out on our first presentation. But what had happened now, to add more fuel to the fire, is Blue Air was late, and we're clean, so we're running out of gas, right? Mm-hmm. So he has to modify the game plan. Instead of doing like an easy maneuver, the first one, now we have to kind of get into it a little bit and get it over quickly so that they have something to see on the in and something to see on the out. And I decided to go ahead and, based on the night vision goggles and the illumination and the horizon and the cultural lighting off of Tampa and the coast, I thought, oh, this is no problem. I can execute this maneuver. I mean, it's a great horizon. It turned out not to be. 24,000 feet is when I started the maneuver. And of course I executed the maneuver, and I was passing about 18,000 feet. And I noticed something I had turned to the west, which was a bad move. Another lineup hole in the Swiss cheese. I should have turned to the east, where there was cultural lighting off the coast in Florida.
Oh, yeah.
I turned to the west.
Okay.
I turned to the west. We have shrimp boats out there. And that night we had a strip of clouds. It was like a belt of clouds.
Okay.
On the
like
over the water.
Complete undercast.
It was an undercast.
Clouds. Yeah. Okay.
No, it was like a strip, but several of them, almost like a wave motion, right?
Gotcha.
So it looked like the flag behind you on your back there. Okay, so our flag. Just think of it like the white on the stripes of the flag. That was over the water, almost perfectly banded out across the water to the west, and shrimp boats were out there. So I did the maneuver, and I'm flying. It looks like a perfect 30-degree nose low maneuver, just like we would as we're descending into our safety block of airspace, which was 10 to 14,000 feet I had to get to.
Yep.
And as I'm passing 18,000 feet, I start to hear the hum of the canopy, which only happens, as you know, when we start getting close to the Mach. And I'm like, why am I going so fast? I shouldn't be going that fast. I'm back at idle. I'm clean jet. I shouldn't be going this fast. And at the time that I did that, I was looking at my radar and my saddle setting up for my next maneuver. So all my cross check was inside the cockpit.
Yeah.
But I heard the noise, and so now my head comes up. But instinctively, because I heard the noise, I had pulled back on the stick.
Yep.
And when I pulled back on the stick, now the picture that I was flying off of changed, and it was just pitch black. And I'm like, okay, something's not right. I just went from a horizon to no horizon. What happened? And I'm like, okay, cross-check altitude. I'm 18,000 feet. I'm descending fast. Well, I got a minute before, a couple of seconds before I get into my block. Let me look to the right, because I only turned 90 degrees, and see if I can see Tampa and the coast, because I just came from seeing that. So I look to the right, nothing. It's black. And I go, okay, well, something's not right. All right, we'll get this together when I get in my block. So as I'm passing 14,000 feet, I go, all right, level off. I pull on the stick, and I was inverted. So I went nose down.
Oh, no.
Even further. Yeah.
Oh, no.
So essentially what had happened was when I looked to the right, I was already inverted. I had rolled the jet over, because as you know, this airplane, when you're going that fast, it doesn't take much.
Right.
And you can be on your back. So I was already inverted in my block, and I pulled, and I'm about 80 degrees nose low. That buried, as you know, in the old days, we had a small ADI in our pedestal.
Well, days, that's what I flew. God.
Yeah, exactly. You flew.
Yeah. All right. Continue. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. So that thing, that ADI is buried. All I'm looking at is a dot, and I go, I've exceeded the limitations of the ADI. Past 65 degrees, no, there's no information.
Yeah.
So I didn't know which way to point the tail. I didn't bring the sky pointer at that second. I didn't bring it into my cross check at all. I was like, I got to get the lines quick, because I am doing 600 bills straight towards the water. And of course, I went straight to 9Gs and tried to get into some lines. And I was just doing the John F. Kennedy death spiral. I got to 7,000, 6,000. And you're supposed to get out if you're out of control at 6,000. But I was doing almost 500 knots. And being a life support officer for as many years as I was like, well, I know that's the red zone.
Yeah. No, that's not
500
good.
knots is the red zone. If I try to punch out here, I'm probably going to get ripped apart. And I got to slow this thing down. So I kept the G's in, had the boards out, and I tried to get it into some lines. And as I'm doing that, the clouds start reflecting all the ambient light into the night vision goggles. And now I can see again. I'm seeing clouds, black clouds. And I say, okay, this is not working fast enough. Recognize, confirm, recover is not working fast enough. As you know, as a pilot, all we got to do is see a horizon. If we see a horizon, we can quickly snap the airplane to where we want it to go to get level with the horizon.
Yeah.
I quickly tried to do that and attempt that. It didn't work. It was just a milk bowl. It was quick. Oh, no, I got to go back to here. So I go back to there. I see that I'm rolling right. I snap the stick left. I bury it. I let off the G's to try and make sense of it. 4,000 feet I'm passing, and I'm slowed down to just below 400 knots. And I can't tell if I'm inverted or right side up or inverted.
Jeez.
I just couldn't tell. 3,000. I see it. I tried to do a quick unload to get it to stop and go, am I inverted or not, and reload. In other words, if the rate of the altimeter slowed down, I was probably, maybe I could throw it in a burner and scrape it below 2. But it was a futile attempt, because I hit 2,000 so fast, and I just went right into ejection. I got to get out. And I pulled the handles, and that was it. And
wow.
when I pulled the handles, I thought the seat was broken. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I made it this far and the seat's broken. Or did I forget to arm it? And I actually took a look to make sure I didn't forget to arm the seat, but it was armed. But that temporal distortion, that 0.18 seconds, just time completely slows down.
Wow.
And I thought I was going into the drink, but next thing I know, I'm getting the wind knocked out of me, and I don't know if it's me hitting the water or me going up the rails, but I was basically transitioning at that point. And thank God I lived. 0.87 seconds left to go. That was it.
That's what they determined, how long before you were outside the envelope?
Yeah. It was 9 seconds of trying to recover, and I had 0.87 seconds left to live. Yeah.
And you had your
Not
EVGs
good.
on, right? You were still wearing the goggles, which is something they
Still wearing
always
the
say
goggles.
that'll kill you by itself.
Yeah, I was still wearing the goggles, trying to make sense of all this, as I'm going down, and I just couldn't figure it out. I didn't have enough time. I mean, maybe somebody else could have. I don't know. But for me, it was just, I think I went through all three spatially. I'm definitely, I don't ever claim to be Chuck Yeager. That's for sure. That's not me. I have to work at it like everybody else. But that night, I couldn't solve the problem quick enough. The only thing I could do was punch out.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
So
once you were in the water, was it hard finding the raft and getting all the stuff? I mean, you're in the middle of the ocean now, or the Gulf.
yeah,
I mean, it's pitch black.
It's pitch black. I could not see my hand in front of my face. I literally did this, and I couldn't see my hand. It was that dark. And but your training kicks right in. I mean, our training is so good, as you know.
Yeah.
That I started sweeping, and I found the line. Next thing I know, I pulled the raft to me. Boom. Here's the raft. It bumps into your helmet, and you just jump in and you start going to town, and feeling around. And I did everything by feel because I couldn't see anything. And I started just feeling around for my equipment. And the cool part about it was at this point, it's not cool, but it's just that I saw some lights flickering off the water, and I'm like, the heck is that?
Yeah.
And I took a look out, and I thought it was a boat. So by the time I'm in my raft, I check for my LED. I see my beacons going. I can see the small green beacon at my feet, and just a little tiny LED going off. So I don't know, that thing's working. So, it's doing its thing. But then I started focusing on this light on the water, and it turns out it was a boat. It was a shrimper out there. So I started feeling around kind of frantically looking for the bandolier flares, man. I'm like, I got to get this guy over here because it was cold. It was January, and the water was 65 degrees or something like that. And that undercast had created, I mean, there was some wind. I mean, it was probably blowing 15, gust 25, and 6 to 8 foot seas. So it was kind of a rough water night. But every now and then through the wave heights, I could see this boat light come up and down. And I finally got the bandolier flare that set up, and I was able to seat those things. I started firing those things off, and I could see him coming up and correcting course, after each one I shot. But I tried to get that night end off, as he's coming. I could actually see them pulling in nets. Yeah. I lit that night end off, but the outriggers, I think, were so bright from that shrimp boat that it drowned out my flare, and he just coasted right by.
Oh no.
Yeah, he coasted right by. Now, but here's the crazy part. That shrimp boat picked up my ejection seat. And my ejection seat is in my house today.
How did that? Wow.
The shrimp, he was so close to my position that he got my seat caught in his shrimp net.
Did he see the crash? Had he seen the crash or anything?
I don't know. Yeah. Never got to talk to the guy. All I know is they sent the seat to they said, we think we have something of yours, and the safety team, the investigation team went out and picked up the seat. It showed up at some shrimp dock somewhere.
But now, was sorry, go ahead.
No, it was my actual ejection seat, and it's sitting in my house right now.
But so it wasn't a boat that got you; it was a helicopter, right?
Yeah, that shrimp boat went past, and I
Yeah,
lost him. So now it was just time to get on with the the search and rescue and help my guy. All my wingman had to come find me,
yeah.
and I finally got him to my position, and then eventually Navy Key West got some guys out of bed and put them in a Black Hawk, and they came and got me. About an hour
Wow.
and 40 minutes later. Yeah,
So an
yeah.
hour and 40 minutes in the water. But correct me if I'm wrong. That's not the end of that story, right? Wasn't there some stuff in the helicopter too with the ACMI?
Yeah, that was the crazy. This is, there's a little survivor's guilt possibly, stuff going on here. So back in those, as you know, in the older days when to create a three-dimensional picture to debrief to, we used to put pods on the jet,
Yep.
and we would send, in order to make that happen, they built towers out in the water where we used to fight, and that way it could send a signal to the pod, and then you would take the data and go back to your debrief room and build a three-dimensional picture and debrief to
Yep.
it. Well, technology, Moore's law, here we go. Those things became obsolete, and so they became obsolete. They weren't maintained. The batteries and the lighting on them went out long ago, and now they're just obstacles in the water out there. Well, turns out the helicopter, when they picked me up, they went to debrief, and they were looking at their tapes, and they had to do wait, what was that? And they did a rewind, and an ACMI tower was grossly close to the rotor blades. They never even saw it. They never even saw it.
You
Yeah,
went back in the water.
we could have gone back in again. Yeah, it would have been bad.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
So
man.
there was some luck and divine intervention on that night, but thank God it all worked out. I got home to my kids, my wife.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow. Yeah. And
yeah.
so, I mean, how long did it take for you to go back to flying? And was it tough to go back to flying after that?
It was tough. I mean, it was 39 days, 38, 39 days, I think, of rehab. I got some injuries. I tore my MCL, ACL left knee, a herniated lower disc in the back, and I had 3 bulging discs in my neck. So I was, I was in pain for a little while. But I got through the knee rehab in about a month. And everyone in our squadron, our OPSO, and they were all warriors. They were just like, get them back in the saddle. I mean, after the
Yeah.
investigation and everything, and just get them up there and get them flying. And I'm like, hey, this is what I want to do. This is what I love to do.
Yeah.
This, I screwed up. I crashed a perfectly good airplane, in the water. I wasn't sure how it happened, but we learned from it. And, I got to get over it. I got to move on and get back to what I love to do, and I pressed on. And that first night, though, of flying at night was, I made sure there was an IP on my wing. Let's put it that way.
Well, and
Yeah.
that jet, I mean, I told you my story when I was on your wing. We were in
Mhm.
Balad, and I spatial D'd and just about ran into the dirt on my second sortie because it was such a spatial D machine. You could
Oh,
so easily, because there was no canopy bow, there's no references. You go where there's no cultural lighting.
right.
Something happens, you look down, and all of a sudden you don't know which way's up.
Yep. Yeah, on the end of a needle, so that's where the whole going back to setting traps, like we talked about in the Swiss cheese,
Yeah.
I wish I had set a trap that night, gone, hey man, this is going to be aggressive, and you're in a clean jet, and you better turn this way, not that way. And,
Right.
I just didn't have enough experience at the time in the jet to be scared of it, doing that maneuver at night over the water. We all know that flying over the water is not ideal,
Yeah.
but I messed up with that, the Swiss cheese there, because I was thinking of, hey man, tactical, I could end up in the strait here in Taiwan trying to help these guys out. I better know how to do this. And that was not, it was too much for the confidence was there, but the level of experience wasn't there at the time. And I should not have probably done something that aggressive. I mean, everything was legal in the
Yeah.
book. It's just, we got to know that, if you're doing that at night over the water, it better be because, you're fighting for your life. You know what I mean? And in terms of training, you want to try and hedge your bets to make sure you've got all kinds of traps set up. That's
Yeah.
all. So,
But you kept flying. So you kept flying. You went back and you ended up flying what? 2007. So 12 more years, 13 more years.
yeah, 2008 is January is when it happened. My last flight was 2016. I was 50 years old. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
2016, May of 2016 was my last flight in the F-16. I retired at 2017.
Yeah. What would you do for your Finney flight?
4v4. It was awesome.
4v4. Yeah.
4v4. Yeah.
That jet changed so much, right? I
It
mean, it had
changed.
gone from an analog jet to,
Yeah.
I mean, we got the picture up as a title card, but you're wearing the helmet, right?
You got the helmet. Yeah, we got the helmet, and now you had the center. We had the MFD. We had 3 MFDs now. The center console, that old tiny ADI was gone, and we fixed a lot of those. I mean, one of the things that was great that we learned from the accident was, let's give these guys, so you don't have to think about it, more than 45 degrees nose level, boom, it showed you exactly, like a flight director, exactly where to point the tail.
Yeah.
You didn't have to think about it. Sky pointers, it was just boom, it just go right into the MFD. Hey, just match these up and you're good to go,
Yeah.
So you don't go, oh my God, I'm staring at a dot and which way do I go? It's right there. I mean, it's instinctive, So that was a great. I remember the test guys had called me to go, what did you need? I said, man, if I just had something that said blue is this way.
Yeah. Well, because it wasn't. I remember it. It was like even when the ADI was correct, like it was just centered. It was like that light blue and that tan and that light tan, and at night you couldn't tell what brown or blue.
It's so hard to tell.
Yeah, because you're just looking under green, and you're like, I think, maybe.
Yeah, you're doing a lot of exactly, and then when it's wobbling because you're moving so fast, it's like you can't process it.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what happened. I just couldn't process it.
Well, on a more personal note, away from flying, you introduced me to Krav Maga.
Yeah.
How'd you get involved in that?
Roscoe helped me out with that. Yeah, it was just Roscoe. Yep.
No.
He got us. Yeah, he
Wait,
did. Yeah,
which Roscoe? Which Roscoe?
I'm talking Roscoe, Court Collier.
I'm thinking of the other Roscoe, and I'm like, there's no way that Roscoe.
No, this Roscoe,
I know you're okay, yeah.
Yeah, he got me, and I was talking to him, and he was saying what he was doing, and then I'm like, that'd be cool. I like to do that with my kids.
Yeah.
And so I went and met Mickey, and Sensei, and we just started as a family taking Krav Maga with him in the garage and Court and his wife for a little while, and before he left, and we were just having a good time with it. And this was the time when bullying was a big thing in school. Remember, I mean, everyone was talking about.
And the way you sold me on it was, if I jump out in bad guy land, this is something.
Yep.
I mean.
Yeah, exactly. And we always want to be tactical when we were getting ready. I mean, we had Iraq. We were looking at Afghanistan. I'm like, man, if we got to get out, I want to know this stuff, And this guy was, Israeli, Hizradut, it's. He taught us a lot of good stuff, and and it was great to do it with the kids. After school, I had a good time with it. We all had a blast. I enjoyed doing it as far as all I did. Of course, kids after a while, they're just, all right, Dad, on to something new.
Yeah. Well,
so it didn't. I mean, we did it for about 2.5 years, I think it was, together, and then
it was awesome. It was awesome training with you and your family. So back to the military though. Before the chat asks, what does Stinky? Tell me the origin story of your call sign.
Okay, so this is the active duty Air Force had a thing called a green bean and a brown bean, right? Okay, so anytime you went TDY, have you heard this before? Green bean, brown bean?
I've never heard this. No, this is new to me. This is something I've not heard of.
In the 90s, when if we did like these big deployments or TDYs, TDYs. You have the green bean, which is like getting there, and you do your little green bean tour, which is go immerse yourself in the local culture and the flavors and that kind of thing. That's your green bean tour. And of course, when you get ready to leave, if you're rotating in and out of a TDY, it's a brown bean. You go have fun, and that's your brown bean. So at any rate, I showed up a little late into the country. I had a problem with my A-10, so I showed up a little bit late. And we're doing a green bean, and we were at the Cobra Gold in '94 in Thailand. And
it's a Thailand story. Okay. All right.
It's a Thailand story. Yeah. So,
all right. Continue.
So I show up on my green bean, and the next day we have a big mass combat search and rescue exercise brief. And I went out with all the fellows, and on my green bean, all the little mom and pop shots down, having all the Thai food. So you can imagine the next day in the mass brief, I had the full-on Pepto-Bismol commercial going on inside, and the proverbial you never want to fart in church type of thing. It happened. Yeah, it happened. I literally was in so much pain, and I was seated in a not very tactical position in the center of the mass brief with Thai media there, by the way, and the colonel briefing. And I finally had to do the one. Can I say this on your podcast?
You absolutely
one cheek.
Can. No, you can.
So this is I did the one cheek sneak, to try and not disturb the brief, and and it was one of those one cheek sneaks where the people, you start looking around you and people are just. And I'm just having a bad time of it. And there was more. Finally, it was obviously creating a, like the predator fish in the middle of the school. People were moving away, and So the colonel just said, "Okay, stop. What's going on, guys?" And I need to excuse myself. I gotta go. And everybody starts laughing, and I go hauling butt to try and prevent, FFS failures,
Hauling,
literally,
yeah. You don't want a gasket failure. Yeah.
Yeah, gasket failure. And I was hostily renamed after that event. As you know what a hostile renaming is.
Yeah.
Is if a 06 hostily renames you, that's it. That's your new call sign.
That's your name.
So,
yeah.
Stinky it was at that point.
What was it before?
Oh, I got it. Noise, because I made a lot of
noise. Man.
Noise.
All right.
Yeah.
Stinky's such a better.
I've had several.
I always thought it was something like a play off of Stinky Pete or something, like Stinky Pete, but
no, no, it was related to the worst possible scenario. Yes.
That is one unfortunate night can have long-lasting effects on your career.
Yes, it can. Yes, it can.
Awesome. Well,
yeah, so my father's so proud.
Was he? I mean,
no, he's not at all, because my brother's call sign is Shooter, and then his other son's call sign is Stinky. So he's not real happy about that. He's like, really?
But Shooter's call sign also has a pretty good story to it.
Yeah, it's a very good story, actually.
That one could have been tragic as well.
No, it could have been, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Stinky, I appreciate you being on. Do you have time to take some questions from the kids
absolutely.
at home?
Absolutely, man. Fire away. I'm having fun. This is good.
This is amazing, man. I never knew the stories were that good. You've been holding out on me.
I try to keep quiet.
I never knew. So Kevin just said, great interview. Have to go back to work. He flew with Army Air as an observer on missile shot. Had a blast. Thanks, Kevin. Let's see if we go. Skid's on the thing. Hey, Skid, what's up? Yeah, ask your questions if you want. I know there was one up here. Let's see here. Oh, there was a question about the ALO. A kid had, and I have to find it. A kid has his interview for the ALO thing. Do you have any advice as somebody who
Oh,
used
his
to do
ALO
it.
thing?
Yeah, he's got his interview coming up.
Oh man, yeah. I don't. I know that they're doing those things remote now, right? They're having like I think they're doing
Like a
the
Zoom or
it,
Skype or something.
yeah, and it's somebody not from his immediate circle. So in other words, if it's his high school ALO, he's getting interviewed from somebody else at
Yeah.
another place. Um, just being, I mean, I don't want to sound cliche, but it's one of those things where try to answer your questions in a situation, action, result type of scenario. So here
Yeah.
was my situation. Here's the way here's what I did, and here's what the result, the outcome.
Yeah.
If you think in terms of structuring your answers to your ALO that way, and be enthusiastic, and not in a way that's not you, but in a
Right.
way that is, I want to go to the academy. I
Hmm.
think that's probably the best advice I could give to someone get ready to take in that admission liaison interview. Try to structure your answer so that you can provide a beginning, middle, of end, situation, action, result, and then give them that feedback that is enthusiastic, that this is where I want to be and this is where I want to go. Have fun with it.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid of it. That's the big thing. Don't be afraid of the interview. Just have fun with it. And if you
Awesome.
can think about those things, situation, action, result, and be enthusiastic about my answer, you're 90% of the interview is complete at that point,
Awesome.
in my opinion.
Ashling, I don't know why she's asking Doug, but I found it. So thank you, Doug. Um, if you could fly any plane, military, civil, currently in the air, permanently parked, what would you choose?
This question is to me, to
It is
fly
to
any
you.
plane.
You are the guest of honor, sir. This is always for
Plane,
you.
military, civil, current. Oh man, that is a tough question. How about an A-10 that goes as fast as an F-16? That's my best answer. An A-10 that goes as fast as the
Oh,
F-16
well,
with
so
the radar.
that's my question. Now that you're out and you can answer this honestly, what was your favorite aircraft to fly in your career? Like, what was your favorite? Like, if I could go back and just do one part of my career over, which part would you choose? Which airplane would you fly again?
Yeah, I think it would. I think it would be the F-16 from the standpoint of, as a, how it is. The F-16, you get to do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, jack
And
of all
if you
trades.
ride the same, you ride the same bike to school every day. It's the same bike. You know what I mean? But the F-16, you get to do air to ground, close air support, air to air, VFO. So the A-10 was an amazing culture to fly with.
Yeah,
Amazing job to do. Amazing. Man, I got to tell you, I would have loved to stay in the A-10 my whole career, but I was always afraid I was not going to be able
right.
to in my career. But I love that airplane. I love the community with that airplane. But I really enjoyed the F-16 from the standpoint of, as we developed skills, as we developed experience as pilots and aviators, it's nice to be able to ping pong and challenge ourselves with different missions. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Oh yeah. No,
And
it's variety. Yeah.
it's variety. It's right. So it's like, okay, man, this month we're practicing BFM. Next month we're practicing air to air. And it's DACT, or it's surface attack. It doesn't matter. There's so many different missions that you could do in the F-16 that I couldn't really do in the A-10, because once you've done the IP thing and the CSAR thing, you've done just about everything in the A-10. You don't get that same variety that you can get in
Yeah.
the because you get to do all that plus more in the F-16. So I think it would be the F-16.
That's awesome.
To also
That's
answer
awesome.
Ashley's question, all the
Yes.
way
No.
around, F-16,
F-16, the Mighty Viper.
the
Bad guy
mighty
wants to know if
Viper.
you have a 30 millimeter round, but you answered that. You do actually
I
have a
do.
30 millimeter. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Okay.
do. If he wants me to go get it, I'll go get it.
No, we don't want you to,
Yeah.
because with my
Yeah.
luck, we would never reestablish communications. Ken wants to know, I don't think we have time for that, but he wants pictures of the seat. He was a parachute rigger at Nellis. Love the Aces too.
Oh yeah, Aces too. Gosh Almighty, man.
But you went
I
to the
went.
factory, right? Yeah, you
Yeah, as a
actually.
matter of fact, God bless him. Thank him very much.
Yeah.
God bless him, because I went to the facility. Mike Blaze, my commander at the time, I asked him, I said, "Sir, will you pay for me to go thank these guys?" You know, because
Yeah.
that thing worked flawlessly, and it had to for my situation. So I went out to the Goodrich facility, visited the whole facility. I mean, there's 1,000 miracles that go into that seat, guys. I mean, a
Yeah.
1,000 miracles, and to meet these people that were putting that attention to detail in every aspect of that seat to make those
Yeah.
1,000 miracles work. That was one of the highlights of my career, was going out there and thanking those guys.
Yeah.
You know, along with my guys, my riggers slash, their crew life support guys that, obviously maintained it well, et cetera. Because I don't know if you knew this, but that seat had some problems with the mode switch in it, and which ended up killing a young kid.
Shaw.
Yeah,
Shaw.
Shaw. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
we did
my
that.
seat was the same generation as that seat.
Yeah.
So I got lucky and he did not. And it's just a terrible tragedy, when something like that occurs. But yeah, it was unfortunate that we lost him,
Yeah.
for that.
That's
Really was.
on a lighter note, Darko wants to know if you ever go sit in the seat.
Well, it's funny. These guys made it like a desk chair, but over the time and moving, yeah, I need a good quality welder, and maybe somebody's an awesome welder out there that's watching your show that can.
Yeah. What part of the country in Florida? A welder in South Florida?
Yeah, I need a welder bad, because it's so heavy, the seat, that the mod that they put on it with a couple of screws didn't hold up. So now I got it in my garage, and I'm just waiting for the right person to come along with the right skills to help me turn it into something nice. But no, I used to sit in it, but now it's not really. It's going to be hard to get up.
Well, we've got a Russian or Chinese spy in the chat that's asking about best speeds for a two-circle fight in the Viper. I'm like, God, why?
Oh yeah,
come on, guys.
Come on
why
now,
y'all
I can't
asking
do
stuff
that.
like this. Come on.
Man.
You trying to get this channel shut down?
No, can't be doing that.
I will answer his other question, though. Would you rather take an A-10 into close air support or an F-16? I think that's...
Oh, come on. Yeah, that's easy. I'll take an A-10 in close air support all day long.
Yeah.
All day long.
Speaking of, so I know what happened in 2009 when we went, but did you have any good stories in the later deployments? Anything noteworthy?
I mean, not really, because it was pretty much the same thing. And but I flew at night. You and I both. I think we flew night and day in Iraq, but in Afghanistan I flew 20 missions all at night, and it was, I didn't get to see a whole lot, and we had to go do shows of force through the weather, through mountain. I mean, sometimes it was hairy, really hairy. I mean, you're making a decision to go into those gulches, to do a show of force on a GPS dot using your terrain, off your map. Pretty hairy, and then, stuff up there towards the border was kind of, but it was more of what we kind of did in 2009. But at night with mountains that are 22,000 feet high.
Oh my God.
Up in the north was crazy. Yeah. It's not, you wouldn't want to have to get out up there. That's for sure. I'm pretty sure that's the one thing I would say. The weather was not so good. It was a challenge, but it was more of a lot like what we did in 2009. Yeah.
I just remember that sortie that you and I flew, like the first one, because obviously, I was first non-graded ride was with Opie. Was my first combat sortie. Yeah, Opie.
Mm-hmm.
But you and I went out, and that was one of those things where I got spatial deed was I had like a master caution of something. I don't remember what it was, but I had master caution, like a flickus problem or something. Look down, get upside down, get right side up, go, holy crap, what did I just do? And then burn down gas, land. And unlike peacetime, where it's like, okay, jet's yours, see you later. It's like, no, you land, you get in the spare, you go take off. Now you had to go to the spare. Like it was like this never ending. And the way I was supposed to be day only, but we were taking off at night.
Right.
We were taking off at 3 o'clock in the morning, so
Yep.
I just remember that ops tempo, and it was a lot of just flying around, looking
A
at
lot of
stuff.
flying around, man. And a lot of looking at there. Hey, dog on the roof, dog around the corner, guy on the roof, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But hey, man, being there for those guys on the ground is,
absolutely.
I don't get any more. I mean, that is, top-notch satisfaction all the way around. Helping those guys out.
Tiger wants to know if you fly general aviation now, or is it just?
I do. I was actually doing GA just to get my kids excited about it. So pre-COVID, I was renting some airplanes up here, 182s, 172s at the local field. But then COVID sort of kind of got in the way of that a little bit with the whole, it kind of shut the operation, the FBO rental operation down for a while. And that's when I got sort of involved with writing this book. And, as I just finished. So I'm going to get back into GA. One thing that I would love to do down the road is get my A&P license.
Really?
And I've been studying for stuff.
I mean, do you work on cars?
No, I've always been I used to do that with my dad a lot in the garage, and just working on small machines, stuff like that. And so it's interesting to me. And I always wanted to get into that aspect of when I'm retired, maybe if I had a little airplane, I want to know everything about it, type of thing. So I got my little engine book, and I went and got my CFI, MEI during COVID as well.
Good for you. Yeah.
I did some little things that, that
DPE
set myself
Stinky.
up.
That's what's next. Is you're going to be the FAA guy that everybody goes to.
Yeah. We'll see.
What's the fastest you went in the Viper? That's a question from the audience. That's not me. That's
the fastest I ever saw in the Viper was 1.8 Mach.
Yeah.
I think. And
that's what I got.
Yeah, and 800, close to just under 800.
Yeah, it's exactly what I did.
Under 800. Yeah.
Yeah, I had the
Not
one time.
Low.
Yeah, I got the one time where they gave you a slick jet, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna do this,"
Yeah.
but I did it wrong. I did it wrong. I hit 800 knots at 1.86 because I was doing the vertical down instead of just across. Yeah. But wow, 1.8.
Yeah, 1.8 and just under 800 knots or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. William says I was a soldier who was helped in Samara, Iraq, 03 and 08. Diyala province. I love you and the other Warthog drivers. That's awesome.
Man, I tell you, that's what I love about the Hog right there. Those stories. I mean, as you know, I think I told you this before, and we didn't get into this in the story. I got to work with these guys on the ground. I was an 82nd Airborne guy, 22 jumps at night as an OV-10 guy. I was in line. I was in line.
Wow.
Jump. I got 22 jumps, bunch of night jumps.
No
Lost
kidding.
the front tooth doing it. But at any rate, working with the Army guys, doing the rock drills at the battalion talk, and just seeing how the whole ground battle is. I got so much respect for these guys, and it was just a brotherhood. The A-10 to Army,
that's awesome.
To air to artillery to calling in, call for fire, call for suppression, learning that whole process, that air to ground process by being embedded with the Army guys and jumping with them and eating the same rats with them, doing all this. It was an incredible experience, and it gives you so much situation awareness when you're in the air working with them,
perspective.
Just huge perspective. Yeah. Huge perspective.
Yeah. Nathan asked, there was a question for me about the Z06, but I'll answer that as yes, but I don't want to take the focus off of this awesome
no,
interview.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry.
What was your favorite deployment?
Favorite deployment?
Is there such a thing as a favorite deployment? I mean,
yeah, that's well, if we're talking combat deployments, I have 2 OSWs, 2 Iraqs, and 1 Afghanistan.
Were you going Connecticut OSW, or was it just capping?
with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Connecticut OSW.
2 Iraqs.
No, no kinetic in that one. It was
Yeah.
just,
Okay.
it was only if there was an issue. You were
Yeah.
just mainly, it was mainly combat support.
Gotcha.
So it wasn't
That's Southern
nearly
Watch,
what we
by
were
the way,
doing.
in case
Southern
anybody's
Watch,
wondering.
yeah, yeah.
Operation Southern Watch,
Um,
Northern Watch.
if we're talking, I don't. That's a tough one, man. I think if the deployment that I had, the the neatest time in was my Thailand Cobra Gold
Yeah.
deployment, because that kind of brought me to the whole roots, because it was down in Thailand, and then you had Laos, Cambodia, the border. We got to see a lot of it, and we were working with that Vietnam era type of mentality that had gone up to a fourth gen fighter type of operation, and we're learning how to orchestrate this thing from 10, 15 years ago we were here,
Right.
trying to fight this communist thing going on over here. Here's what now we're working together in Thailand, is what we've learned, and now you guys are flying F-16s. Here's how we work. That was really kind of neat, was to work with these guys on that level. So being in Asia over there with was pretty cool, with the Koreans, with the Thai, with down in Okinawa, and working with all that. With the Navy as well. It was sort of a whole integration that was joint, but we weren't really talking about joint ops.
Yeah.
We were talking about joint. This is early days.
Yeah. Right.
We didn't. It wasn't even a thing. You just did it. But now it's like, now we got to be trained in joint operations. No, we just did it back then. You know what I mean?
And it worked. And it worked.
Yeah, and it worked.
It worked.
Yeah, I mean, I knew how to call in Anglico, call for fire on a battleship. I mean, we were taught at AGI. It wasn't, I have to go to joint school and get the joint tag and go.
It's an OPR.
Yeah, OPR. Was you just did it. They trained you. You worked with them, and I enjoyed that. The Korea phase, A-10, OV-10, Talon, that's probably my favorite time, right there.
Yeah. Deploying
in that regime.
Well, for the last question, I'm going to take it. I'm going to take it from the audience, because this is mine.
Okay.
We talk about make them tell you no on the channel, and it really goes to the theme of your book. What advice do you have? 17-year-old kid says, "Hey, Stinky, I want to be you. How do what advice do you have, just in general, keys to success to get them through a career and to get them to be successful, not only from starting, but to be successful once they do it?"
The one thing that I will say for that is, first of all, the book is me in that question, and me answering that question. You're talking about a guy that was that kid that's going, I don't know if I could do this. I don't know if I could do this. But what I will say is, the one thing is, I almost turned it into, I'm going to get angry about this. Okay. I mean, and people told me, don't ever use that word, angry. No, I'm like, nobody can tell me I can't.
Yep.
And no, I'm not even going to tell myself I can't do this. And even when I have trouble, I'm going to get angry about not saying I can't. You know what I mean? That was kind of my attitude going through that whole process, because there is, to get all the way through all of the wickets and the hurdles that you got to go through. There's going to be a lot of the times there where you're going, man, I suck, or am I ever going to get this?
At all stages. Everywhere, not just the beginning.
I crashed a $20 million airplane. I mean, I had to come back from that. I mean, you gotta go, look. This is what I love to do. This is what I want to do, and this is what I want to do more than anything else. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. You're going to get over these hurdles. It may come easy to you. It may. But I promise you that the journey, even if it's just something that comes natural, you're going to hit some walls. And nobody gets every aspect of this business of flying fighters perfectly every time. They just don't. and you've got to be able to get through those and go, I can get through this. I'm going to go to the sim, or I'm going to study my tail off to get through this instrument test, or I'm going to study my tail off to get through this check ride that I just busted. You can't let those valleys take you out of the game. You just can't,
Absolutely.
just keep telling yourself, man, if Stinky can do this, I can do this.
No.
All right.
No. Well,
Yeah.
Stinky, it has been an absolute pleasure. I appreciate you coming on the channel, telling your story. For those of you that want to pick up Icarus 2.0, link is in the description. Pick it up. It's a quick read that is very insightful. Quick. There's a lot of stuff. You're not going to be bogged down for a long time. A lot of good stories in here, a lot of good advice. So, Stinky, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it, man. I hope your instructing and your wrenching on aircraft go well and continue flying the friendly skies. Maybe we'll see you up there.
We'll do it. Mover, pleasure, man. Great seeing you again. And thank you for bringing me on to talk to these guys.
All right.
Good luck, guys.
Everybody, thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you next time.